Pulled in Brooklyn is a show about community, about innovation, experimentation, sheer will, friendship, relationships, mentoring, and all of the remarkable collaborative relationships and artworks that came out of the past several decades. We're going to take you back in time a little bit today and forward in time a little bit as well. I want to give a shout out to one of the curators, Roberta Waddell, who is in the back row. Her partner in crime, Samantha Rittner, couldn't make it tonight. She had a school event, I believe. But we thank the two of them who spent many, many, many months crossing parts of Brooklyn and looking at over 30 workshops to cull this extraordinary body of work that you're seeing. So this is the second to last in a series of public programs that we've done. The other three, if you missed them, web videos are on our website, so you can go back and visit those. And I also want to point out that we have an outstanding catalog with two really beautiful essays, one by Luther and one by the curators of the show, and it also functions as a directory of all of the printmaking activity that's happening out in Brooklyn today. So you can pick that up tonight. And online, all of this information is also available in addition to an expanded directory that includes many workshops that aren't on view, but are very, very active, some of them new on the scene. So check that out, in addition to a series of 7 videos that we have that spotlight some of the workshops included in the show. So they're on these monitors in the galleries, but they're all available online. So I'd like to welcome our panelist, Luther Davis, who was also, from the start, a big part of this exhibition in terms of thinking about how to cover all the territory, all the relationships, and the kind of ethos of the show has a lot to do with him and the decades that he spent on the ground in Brooklyn. So we want to welcome Luther Davis. He's going to introduce himself and the rest of the panelists, and we're in for a real treat. So I'm going to hand the microphone over.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming. This is an amazing crowd. I once gave a talk at Exit Art, and only Ray Cross from Bushwick Printback showed up. Only him and Exit Art, and he's never come to anything I've spoken at since. So it's great to have you here. If you don't know my colleagues here, I'm originally from Line Press Limited, graduating from Marshall Editions, and forgive me if I mispronounce your name, Glenn Baldridge? Yeah. So, that's right. From Fourth Estate. And if you haven't had a chance to see the show, maybe you want to right now, go check it out. But it's a great show, and it's the biggest show to date at IPCNY. Thank you so much for having this event and giving us a chance to talk. One of the amazing, I am an educator. I teach at Cooper Union. I've got some former students here. I teach parts of the School of Design. I got my start with Noblet Serigraphy. Jean-Yves Noblet showed up for some reason. Hey, Jean-Yves. And then I worked for a print shop called Axel Editions for a while in Brooklyn and Boerum Hill. And currently, I'm part of Powerhouse Workshops, Powerhouse Arts in Red Hook. And it's been a journey. Many of you have had a journey. So I would love, Ruth, if you wouldn't mind telling me a bit how you got your start. And you're on a new part of your journey.
How far back should I go?
Go back as far. So I remember the first time I ever saw you.
Okay.
And I was, Jean-Yves made me huff copper plates from his shop on 13th Street, 2 paste to cut them down. And when I walked in, that was a long trek to cut Paul Hopper, but came in there, used your plate cutter, and I think you were making some hearts and Pinocchios. And
with Jim Dine,
yeah,
yes.
Jim Dine.
Yes. Well, I studied printmaking in college. That's how I got into it. And then I studied in Madison, Wisconsin, grad school. I met Joe Wolfer there. He was working in New York on Big Chuck Close Editions. So I taught there for a year and then came to New York to sort of what you'd call standing right now. I came and stand him in New York, so Stockton family. Until I did a lot of freelance work at the time when I first got to New York. Highly recommended for printers. You got to keep your game up when you're running around doing things ad hoc at all different kind of studios. And just started working for Pace Editions freelance, and then I started working full time. So I worked there many years. Spring Street, 18th Street. Set up a studio 10 years ago out in Gowanus, Pace Paper, which was handmade paper based mostly with printing. And in between have done editions out in Amagansett, a lot of big paper things with Chuck Close. Did a couple of years of teaching, and that's about it. Oh.
That's well, that was, yes, short and sweet, but all of those journeys that you took, all the different shops, you've been collaborating the whole time with fellow printmakers and artists, right?
Tons of printmakers. I've collaborated with lots of people, and I gotta say, this show's really made me realize the strength of printing in New York. And New York, of course, has always been a printing town. Because when I first got here, all the big type shops in the city were going bust, and I would drag around town, and they would give you free bags of type if you would haul them away. I'll never forget those early memories of walking down Canal Street with tote bags and the handles breaking, and you having like just 50 pounds of type and dragging along one foot at a time. But this is such a great pool of talent in this town, and I would challenge any other city in the world because there are people that can do everything here. That's what's so great is I love just calling people up and saying, I need some help with this, or can I bring something over or borrow your plate cutter or whatever. So it's an excellent, excellent group of printers here. And that's one of the things I most love about printing that I always got into was besides the collaboration and just working with lots of new people all the time was just the fact that you're part of this sort of extended community that has always been super welcoming. Recently out at Line Press, which I forgot to talk about, which is a new small shop, smaller than Pace, obviously, but mostly focusing on letterpress and lithography, artist books, and smaller scale editions, kind of downsizing a little bit. But a young woman printmaker came from Australia recently, and she came through, wanted to see the studio. I've worked with Australian printmakers a lot, and so I said, you're going to have a great time. She was planning on traveling the world. And I said, you're going to just go to any print shop and they're going to take you in and say hi and welcome you in because that's how printmakers are. That's what I love about them.
She came to my shop too.
She did? I think we sent her there.
Randy, would you like to talk a little bit about Marginal and your experiences?
Sure. My story is not nearly as interesting as Ruth's, but going back a little ways of time, I guess I had a real kind of wizard of a letterpress teacher out in Seattle where I went to undergrad, and I kind of came to letterpress, I guess, a little bit late. I consider myself probably more of a letterpress printer than a screen printer, but I do a lot more screen printing now. And yeah, the typeset wizard I had out there kind of set me up for it. Discovered that sort of late. By the time I came to New York doing internship, and I was studying in the type shop at RISD in Providence, and yeah, I don't know what more to say about it. By the time I had gotten here, I was lucky enough to beg my way into working at Grenfell Press, which is where I currently work there now, and it's been about 13 years I've been assisting her. We actually did do a lot more of the type printing in the past. I still occasionally do it, but I mean, I love what I'm going to be just mostly agreeing what these guys are saying up here, because for me, it's not really about, I mean, I'm really glad I'm here, but I'm definitely super appreciative of the artists that I worked with. So that for me is always the focus of this, and I'd like to see why, but yeah. Mostly, there's quite a few artists that are actually here that I've collaborated with too, so I just consider myself pretty lucky. I've studied with some interesting people, but the artists that I work with now are like what keep me going.
Marginal.
I guess that's my training.
And marginal emissions.
And marginal emissions. which is right. Yeah, so I mean, it's just Marginal's actually an extension of, we were talking about printing in the evening, printing on off hours of what our job was, that our day job was printing, I guess, larger projects there was a bit more money in the projects, and then I started kind of begging my former classmates to come and join me and make woodcuts and do simple things, and yeah, it's just kind of evolved into asking the artists the work that I see around that I love, asking if they have any interest in working with me as well, after I see what they've made with other printers. So it's kind of an extension of that, I guess.
And you work in multiple shops, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm now just working mostly at Grenfell. I kind of work off and on at the Lower East Side Print Shop when they have me. Sometimes when they're a little bit in need, I can add a hand to Eric Hogan, the master printer there, and then sometimes I collaborate on editions with my talented wife. She's a better printer than I am, and so I get to jump in on some of her projects as well. So, yeah.
True pleasure.
And teaching as well is the other part of it. Just I get to have a good crew of students, grad students that I end up working with a lot of times in some capacity, assisting me, where it's another part of it that kind of keeps it going, like how you're mentioning all the teaching you do, that they're here and that your students are supportive of.
Glenn, do you want to talk about, so the joke of me not being able to pronounce Glenn's name is that we're actually been partners for 10 years in a publishing company called Fourth Estate, and a bit of what we've done is represented here. And I think we met at a RISD tour, possibly. They came through Jean-Yves' shop, No Place for Your Feet. Is that where we met?
Yeah.
Which is an odd thing, and I'm like, hey man, what's up? And then you just came to me I think we just started, Glenn found artists he wanted to work with and started coming to me at Excel. I think that's how it started, right?
Yeah, more or less.
Okay, I'm gonna make you explain the story.
Sure.
Yeah, so Luther and I ran Fourth Estate Editions from 2005 to 2015. And we started pretty humbly, like what Brad was talking about, like printing in the evenings and weekends. And then kind of built up to doing print fairs and really doing kind of more experimental projects and stuff like that. But we did meet at Jean-Yves' shop on a RISD tour where I studied printmaking. And around 2000, I moved to New York City, and I was kind of set up like a renegade type of, silkscreen shop, not much equipment in my apartment, and I was doing contract work and kind of piecing it together to make money and working in galleries. And I got in a little over my head on like a project, and I was trying to edition something really amazing that it just wasn't possible with like my bucket of water set up. And so yeah, I called Luther and he helped me out, and that's kind of how we started getting things going.
I think a lot of our dialogue at the time was, there's all these artists that we know we'd love to see prints being made of. And the systems that we were working on, or the contract printing, the publishing system, was limiting in that there was a criteria set by someone else. It may be some kind of return on investment. Maybe it had to be these colors and fit in with, what was considered the next, I don't know, whatever criteria. It wasn't the criteria we were choosing, which is what we wanted to hang out and make some cool stuff with someone who we thought would make great prints. And so that was sort of like,
Yeah, similar to Brad's situation too.
and I mean, you want to work with people that you want to work with, right? Which is great. How do you go about choosing artists for lines?
Well, mostly it's, I've always got my ears and eyes to the ground, like looking at shows, just anywhere. I'm always on the lookout for something that I think might work when I'm flipping through a magazine or anything, just strolling around. And then I see things that other people have done that kind of trigger, but yeah, and then sometimes I'll approach galleries, or sometimes it's just, usually just word of mouth or walking around going and seeing shows. But I definitely would say, if you're like a young printer starting out, you just never know you have to treat every person you work with as the beginning of a relationship that could go on forever, because For example, I started printing for Jim Dine in 1991 and continue to work extensively with him still. So you just never know where those relationships are going to go, which is what's great about it.
That was a wake-up call. Also, Jean's studio, and my first summer there, pick up the phone. Jean, you there? Yeah. Who is this? Bob. Bob Rauschenberg. And I was like, oh, Johnny? Yeah, it's like they like I should learn some etiquette, and I should learn to be nice.
Yeah.
Right?
Can I add one more thing about that?
Please
And
do.
always be nice to your interns, because I now have about 5 of them that are very famous and could be bosses of mine at this point, you know, so,
That is it. Yeah, that's true.
very famous.
Well, the connectivity of this show shows how the tendrils spread and the roots spread, and I think we might have met at EAB Fair the first time. I don't know. It's true.
Yeah, I think I told the story to Roberta one time when she came to Grenfell the first time when I was at RISD, and you guys we were grad students, so we were pretty proud of our space that we were working in, and you guys kind of swooped in to work on the Jane Kemp thing, the project, the Orchid Thief, and we were kind of like, what the hell, who are these guys, you know? And they just kind of came in, you guys refashioned that machine that was in the corner of the room. It was like actually automated machine. Within a few days of us staring at it for an entire year, you guys had it figured out within a few days, and we're working with it and auditioning large-scale prints, and we were sort of all kind of in awe of you guys. It was pretty cool. I mean, that was like the first time that I had heard of you both, actually, so I was pretty scared of you that first time.
You're scared.
And then at some point, I think after I'd seen Rob's foil stamp, the beautiful piece that's up high in the other room, and it just kind of was a mind blower, probably for a lot of people in this room, to be able to see that up close. And I remember coming to your old location and looking at your foil stamper, and in my head, I was like, this is the stamper that made the Bud Johnson piece. It was like one of those things.
That when we moved, that stamper didn't go with us. It was too much to do.
Casualty.
Yeah. We had to relearn it every single time. We made up new rules every time. And I think you once brought something to us to print, and it was like, I can't do this.
And it was tiny compared to like what you guys did too. So I was just so pumped to be in your space. I couldn't believe that I was even in there. I knew I wasn't probably geeking out too much, but I was kind of like, holy shit.
You want to talk about that time, or about how the times? Well, what's interesting about working with Glenn is that we had a trust, and I think you trust with the interns that come up, and trust with the artists, and we had a sort of trust that we were going to have fun no matter what, and we wanted to educate ourselves at the same time, I think.
Yeah, I guess at that time too, there were a lot of blurred lines between what projects we were working on, because I was doing contract work, kind of consulting, bringing projects to Luther, and then I worked at CRG Gallery and started an editions program there, so I was bringing in a lot of their artists and kind of managing every project with that, and then we were doing our 4th Estate editions as well. So we were just working together kind of all the time, and sometimes, after hours, but a lot of times like on thought too, with the whole staff. So sort of depending on what we had going on. But yeah, I think Rob's the only guy. Rob and Elise Ferguson are the only ones that got to use that amazing foil stamper.
That's true.
I have this funny feeling with my teachers, with my students, that we're hitting sort of a new golden age of print. Maybe it's just my sentiment, but we're combining new technology, old technology, antiquated technology, 3D printing, and that print is now, it's wow. Some of the parts that we learned is not maybe part of the mainstream print, but print is part of the culture in a different way. Everyone has their own printer, et cetera, et cetera. So do you feel like this
I mean, am I alone in thinking that there's new opportunities out there that are new for me to explore anyway? What do you think?
You're not wrong.
Okay.
No, well, okay, just one of the prints that we have representing us is Matthew Day Jackson, that print with what I love about that print, if you take a look at it, it's called Solipsist. It's got stenciled handmade paper, which is something I've loved doing for a long time. It's got egg albumum on lithostone, which is a 19th century printing technique. And then it's got a laser cut, a laser engraved, oh, there it is behind. It's got a laser engraved polycarbonate etching is what we call it, which is something Matt made for us on his laser cutter over there. So what I love about that is that's 21st century technology. So melding of all of them can give these really cool new hybrids. And he's obviously a great artist working that kind of hybrid style. So we're excited.
Yeah, and he's a printmaker by training. He's
an excellent printmaker, yeah, so it's serious when you work with him.
Yeah, it is. We do a little bit of work at our shop with him, and it's like, I trust you to do it. And then I'm like, do you really? But, right, a lot of your recent work is troping sort of modern technology in old print fashion as well. Is that, am I making
Really? I feel like I'm so far behind in some ways, a lot of stuff I'm seeing, but I'm trying. I'm always interested in, I mean, there's a couple prints that are on the other side that are by an artist named Florian Meisenberg, who, like, for me, going from working with sort of my fellow classmates, and then, there's like the examples of it, and then he's actually somebody that sought me out really online, contacted me at first about, can you help me make some posters for my show? And like we just, through the course of that very first project, where weirdly he paid me, and the whole time I was like, holy shit, I'm working with this amazing artist. So before we were even done, I was like, I have this idea, I would love to make a group of works with you, or unique works, or an edition or something. This was our first collaboration. I did the screen printing for it, which essentially was just these weird Photoshop backgrounds. He's like a video artist and a painter, and then he took all after the initial couple colors were laid down, he just did all this wacky, he had like a kid's airbrush and all this weird stuff. He just took it to the studio and did all the rest of it himself, did all these weird desktops. So, like that to me is, I mean, I love that collaboration. I didn't see a lot of it happening, the second part of it, but I knew that he has unlimited scope to do anything. So when you come across an artist like that, and I really, like I've said to other people, he was like the first really pure artist. You could just tell the moment that you meet somebody like that, it was just like, that was such a nice collaboration. So for me, I was just lucky that somebody was willing to take those weird leaps. I'm always looking for that, but I'm like only half, part of that. I love that the artist can think of these wacky things. It was all Florian, the ending of that. So.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of wacky things, Glenn, would you mind talking about your art?
That's it. In general?
No. We have several new pieces in the show, which are, you can talk about this if you want. What's great about working with Glenn is we always were also working on his work as well at the same time as part of our programming too. And
Sure. So in the other room, there's a couple prints that were part of a suite of scratch-off prints that I made that were, they're coffins. I was living in this former coffin factory and found this coffin catalog at the time, and Luther had said that he developed this really awesome scratch-off ink that could be used, and so I came up with this idea to make a suite of 7 prints. There's a scratch-off ticket in New York City called Lucky Sevens. So that's the title of the suite. And so each one is like hand scratched off to reveal this coffin below this pattern, these fleur-de-lis patterns. And that was a really fun project.
So good.
And then we also, I wanted to make these next to it. The work using these bullet hole decals, and Luther had these color shift pigments that were really cool that he was trying to figure out what to do with and using in different ways. And I thought it'd be really cool to use these decals that were, meant for like putting in your car. And I would do this hot rod pigment shift around the bullet holes. And we did kind of a hybrid inkjet and silkscreen thing here to make it look like it's really chipped away in the matte inkjet bullet holes and a super shiny color shift. But yeah, a lot of it's just like hanging around the shop, like seeing what's up with the different things that you could do and like coming up with cool ideas.
What's next?
Yeah.
Had you used I haven't watched it. Were you guys using that color shift in another project? And
Probably.
how did that?
One of the great things about being a consumer of massive amounts of paper and ink is that distributors come to you and pitch you stuff. And they always have their like, oh, and by the way, off to the side, right? I've got this stuff. And so, of course, you fall in love with the side thing that you've never seen before. And this particular pigment is shaped like a hexagon. It's like a little prism. And, fell in love with it instantly. And then
There are different ones. There's ones that shift green, red, yellow.
astounding. Yeah, these are some of my favorite pigments. But what I didn't know after falling in love was that there's something like $2,000 a kilogram, right? So when it came time to do it for I think the first job we did was a Rebecca Creighton. I had to literally, it was like what I would imagine scoring drugs would be like, since I've never had to do that, I'm just imagining it's where I'd have to, dime bag costs of this stuff, and the guy, ha. But you just kept poking him, and then he broke up into these little, from kilos down to like $400 worth of stuff. I mean, that lasted a long time, all that stuff. But it's interesting, silkscreen is this beautiful process that can print on anything, so I feel like there's always this invention of weirdness that's happening behind the scenes at an industrial level. And that's one great thing about being in New York, and I try to speak of it in Brooklyn. There's this history. Ulano's headquarters, where they made Ruby Lip right on Dean Street. Like, there's air conditioning was invented in a print shop in Brooklyn. There's all this weird industrial stuff still percolating behind the scenes, and chemistry, and getting to work with R&D firms, with designers, with the next level of stuff is really exciting. But that, to me, that's my art at this point. I'm always asked, are you making your own stuff? And that seems to be where I've fallen in sort of directorship. I know you make a lot of your own work. Are you still making your own?
Yeah, I'm making a few things, mostly letterpress things. I'm wearing one right now. But not that much, but trying to plug away on some artist book projects too. Handset type takes time,
It's true.
But I also wanted to hear more about your experimental things, because I feel like whenever I see what you're doing crazy things.
Well, I'm a moderator, so I don't know if I can do that. Well, so
One more.
Our shop has always been a contract shop, and so the Fourth Estate was a chance to publish. We always work with other publishers who didn't have. We've been Pace's silkscreen shop at times. We've been to the silkscreen shop for a lot of people. One of the great things about being in the thick of production is always wanting to learn something, right? I think this is a driving factor in making in general, but in a lot of what we do, because it's low risk, it's a piece of paper, it's a really expensive piece of paper, but still, it's a piece of paper, so it's low risk, so you can take a chance. And I think this is really an engagement with artists, and like, when they're not looking, you throw a bunch of stuff together and like, look at this thing, that in print that can happen readily and quickly. You can change colors and change processes. So as far as the experiment that we've always been trying to do, it's just a way of trying to keep myself educated and keep myself guessing what other colossal mistakes can I make now? And that's a lot of how I learn. I don't know if that's how you learn.
Well, I was going to say that was like the last talk here when Marina and Carrie, they talked about how the fact that Carrie took the stuff that she was making with Marina and actually took it back, continued to develop, and printmaking really became part of her practice outside of the print shop. So that was pretty cool, just to hear that there's a really great takeaway for both the artist and the printer. It's a pretty even exchange, or it can be, and that's part of the fun of it too.
I also feel that if you're printing, then a constant learning curve is just always there. I don't know if it's, like sometimes I'll go back to some technique I did years ago and it'll just seem brand new again because you have different problems this time, you know? So I do feel like the print nerds, you know, when I find myself in an opening with printers, we launch right into the, you know, I can't get my driver, you know, like all the printing problems. But I feel like that's a big part of it, and that's what's kind of fun about it, is constant problem solving. I mean, I really enjoy problem solving and also brainstorming. So it seems like this is such a great medium for brainstorming and coming up with all kinds of weird, wacky ways of doing things. And I mean, I tend to feel like my strength, if I had to look back on projects, has been things that have been these sort of cross-pollination between printmaking and papermaking. And I couldn't have made these jumps in papermaking if I didn't have a printmaking background, and sort of vice versa, because even developing weird registration systems or dealing with like super big paper that's decked with 4 sides and how do you register 15 colors, and you know, that kind of stuff. So I think, yeah, I feel like I'm almost learning something.
I tell my students I have a master printer title. That means just being more mistakes than anyone's likely to make in their lifetime. And it's every day. And, right? Yes. Some days big ones, some days small ones. I try not to pick the same ones every single day.
There's definitely still those days where you're like, how do I get into this? How do I get into this hole?
No, that's true, for sure. What's also interesting, as part of that, I'd like to go back a little bit of the possible golden age that we live in, is how much print stuff is just out there ready to find a new home, too. We were just recently given a 14.5 by 22 CMP platinum press, which is one of the first presses you learned on, you said, right? And then, Glenn, you have a fully formed Riso shop in here.
Sure. I've been getting into Rezo printing after 4th Estate and mostly doing posters and kind of like you said, low stakes, like high volume kind of printing. But yeah, it's fun. And these machines are cheap and they're out there, and you know, people are always looking to get rid of them, or if you can fix them up, it's pretty awesome.
You're also giving Epson as well?
Yeah, inkjet printers. I've been given a couple inkjet printers that, you know, are a little out of date, and like somebody wants to offload them and can mess around with those things too. And, yeah.
So, by the way, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I was at one of these, and I think it was the Build Your Own Print Shop, and there's a woman who sat in front of me, and she was waiting for us to give her instruction on how to build an actual print shop from scratch. And you could see she had a million questions, and that wasn't what real or metaphorical was. Does anyone have any questions there? Come on now. Really?
They're working on it.
They're working on it. Well, let me see what the question is.
I have a question.
Oh, thank goodness.
The man over here.
What are some of the challenges of starting your own press or publishing company, just logistically? Finding a place to print, financing it, getting the work out there.
Yeah, those are all problems, especially when they're becoming
What are some of the solutions?
Well, for Luther and I was lucky that he worked at a shop, so that's kind of how we started. Is he had access to all this stuff, and I had kind of rudimentary setup at home. So and I studied printing in college, so I knew how to do it, but not at a professional level. So I learned a lot just by being in his shop, and then I guess there were a lot of other people out there like me and like Luther, that like Brad and Luther, that want to do other things and work with other artists. So kind of just wanted to make it happen was part of the thing for us, and we did, for better or for worse. But we never had a physical 4th Estate print shop that we had to pay employees and stuff like that. So that made it a little bit more fluid, and we could do other things and work with other shops also, and not just rely on Luther's equipment,
I think what helped me too I did freelance for a long time, so, and lots of different techniques, as I was saying, so I was sort of like jack of all trades. And I just started early because you only would get paid if you really kept track of your hours. You have to figure out like what's your profit off that. And just like tracking all that stuff constantly, which is really tedious, but I did, I have gotten super good at doing that. So I think that's a big thing, which is really to be able to estimate really the time that it takes to do complicated projects. I've printed a lot of complete letterpress books for people, and so that includes all the images, all the handset type, all of that. So I really was getting to the point where I could take a book that was 30 pages and estimate to within like $200 of how much that was going to cost to make that edition. So I think it's just you have to make yourself do these really tedious paperwork things to figure out the money part. And then I have definitely had a person give me some advice once who was sort of like on the money side. And she said to me, you don't need endless clients. You need 3 or 4 really good clients. So start with those 3 or 4 really good clients, and then you have your odd and end things or whatever. But like get some really steady clients that have the dough are going to be there for you. That's my advice.
Well, I definitely spent time essentially living like 10 feet from the press. I went through a lot of that thing where I would be teaching all day and then maybe at the print shop for the second half of the day, and then I would go home and I was still in the print shop. So it became a little bit like I started to hate the press for that reason because it was always so close to me. And then and then I was lucky enough to slowly, at least I got some, it was essentially contract printing. It was like how we were talking, I would do contract printing at night, barely get through that. I had no idea if I was making money or basically printing for free, essentially. But then it was always like, all right, it's 10 o'clock at night, at 10:30, Chris will be here, we can start on his woodblock. It was a lot of that at the beginning. And honestly, it's still for me, like even working with you guys, working with some of the other artists in here, it still comes to pass that when I'm making the work with the artist and I'm experiencing like kind of it sounds cliche, but the joy of like the moment that it's actually coming together. For me, that's the hard thing, that's when the project is at its most amazing. And then we divvy the prints up, or we figure out the split of the prints, and then I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I have no way of selling any of these, but that was amazing. The making was amazing. So I still have a hard time with that part. I still haven't figured out the part 2, which is like making it into like the business part of it. But I'm still glad there's still that joy moment that happens.
I actually have a question related to what you just said, because I do a lot of editioning, and I have, artist proofs from like years and years of work. Most of them I want to hold on to these because I love them and I want them to be in my collection. But like, what do you do? How do you sell an artist proof as like an independent person? Do you like go to a gallery, do you go back to the original artist and they get a portion of it?
I've actually been dying to open up a printer's proof gallery, but so far it's eluded me. But I have this whole thing, this brainstorming sessions that I'm always doing about that exact thing, because I have we all have drawers full of projects with these beautiful prints that we know will never see the light of day. But occasionally you're lucky enough to work with an artist and somebody actually somehow has got your phone number and they're like, I would love to buy that print from you. That's the only time it's really happened for me, to be honest with you. And it's usually, it's so random. Sorry.
Well, there are options. Yeah, I hear that. I hear there are. I guess I just don't know about.
I say just hold on to what you have, the prints that you love, put them on your wall so you can enjoy them while you have them, and then just if that phone rings, that's maybe that could be a purchase. I don't know. I usually am so happy to hold on to them, and that's the thing that we're all kind of thinking about. I have 100 prints in a drawer. I don't want them to get wrecked. Maybe somebody else would love them.
I do think that's an issue in the contemporary print world right now, is where our sort of like the secondary print dealers there was a guy named Gil Einstein, that was all he did, and his wife did that after that. And it's like so many now, there are these kind of self-publishers, and so by becoming a self-publisher, as we are, then it's who's going to sell those prints. So as this sort of market changes and things are sold more online, which some people think is going to become more and more the case, I've heard predictions from dealers of up to 50% of prints being sold online in like the near future. I don't know. So it's that. I mean, I guess I feel like with people that are savvy onliners, people definitely, there's printmakers out there that are existing off selling their prints online. Definitely. I mean, I don't know what else to say because I just think that is kind of an issue with the secondary print. If it's not something you're publishing and then you're representing yourself, where do you find that representation besides online?
Well, I know I'm preaching to the choir because of where we are at this moment, but it's because of IPCNY, the sort of educational programs that we have, continuing a dialogue and educating a new consumer base. And this is something that we all have to do as artists and practitioners in the arts and as educators in various schools. If this is the baseball card collecting of our world, right? You can have the greatest, the all-stars of art in a little box under your bed if you want. But I think that, and we're all very fortunate to work with some of those all-stars and have some DPs from them. But if there isn't that next generation to appreciate them, right? And that's part of why the programming here is so important, in my opinion. And thank you, IPCNY, for your continued support of the print world. And just hold on, just hold on for a minute while. Does anyone else have any questions? I got a great Carl Fudge hanging on my wall. He's taking a picture of me.
She has a question.
Yes.
I came a little late, so maybe you talked about this, but how do the Brooklyn printers fit into the national picture of printers, for example, or other neighborhoods?
Well, I will say that as someone who helped with the show, part of the idea of Brooklyn as a focus was that there was just a critical mass of us. There's just so many of us, or so many of us got our start there. And as I was writing, I'm like, well, could I really put Queens in here? Could this is true for Manhattan too? Is this then true for, this is really, some of these things I'm saying are true for everywhere, but there's just so many of us. I think one of the draws for Brooklyn is that there are larger industrial spaces. You can have a big shop still. There are people cutting metal next door, right? There are tinsmiths, and the business right next to me just got a giant brake and a metal sheeter. So there's all these possibilities to just roll in because of the nature of Brooklyn. You want to, and Glenn's studio is in the print shop that invented air conditioning, right? So
that's right. I can't really speak about nationwide about every print shop because this is just where I work and the people that I have access to. But I've done a lot of consulting on print projects, and I've brought a lot of artists out even from LA and all over the country to work at Luther's shop making screen prints. So I just know that his shop is one of the best for screen printing. And
do you know
I'm lucky to have worked there.
in LA, for example? I'm sure there's a whole slew of shops there. Are you in touch? I know Southern Graphics is still the academic association, but is there any kind of professional association?
There's not a lot of contract, for hire print shops. I think there's a lot of people that are strictly print publishers, and they, I could be wrong, but they have their artists that they work with, and they don't pick up the phone to do jobs that are coming in. And the Luther shop is special because of that.
I have screen printing colleagues in the room right now that I love and send business to. But once again, IPCNY's map of the print world, you can sort of figure out where the hotspots are. And that is one of my favorite things to do when I have nothing else to do, is look at the map of the print world. And that actually helps when someone calls me and they say, do you know someone in San Francisco that can do the map of the print world? I don't think it's 100%. I would love more resources put in there. And if any of you go on and know of people who aren't on the map of the print world, I encourage you to get the map more complete, right?
Yeah, we love it. It's online. Just email it, call us. We'll add it.
But when you zoom in, you'll see that there are hotspots all over the world, right? So Brooklyn just happens to be one of them. Was that a fair answer to the question? Yeah. All right. Anyone else? Any questions? Yes.
How does, you guys all kind of talked about contract printing, coming up with quotes and managing your time, but how does that inform the work that you publish that's on the side, basically? Like not on the clock, but work that you can do in your spare time? Is it more profitable for you to work in publishing, or is it more profitable for you to do contract work? Which is your heart and which is your soul?
For me, that's one gives to the other. So if I can bid a job correctly and have the hours work out and have a little bit of money come in from a contract job, it'll go directly back into like, oh, I have a couple $100 more for paper that we can actually use here. I'll do an exact equation of something will come in and then it'll go right into a project I'm working on almost every time.
Yeah, I would have to say to that, I like both things equally, actually, because I think doing contract things, working with other publishers, other galleries, whoever, you get access to these people that oftentimes you have such a strong association with somebody else that you either wouldn't want to go in and barge in on that, or you would be able to work with people you wouldn't otherwise sort of come into contact with. So I think they're both really fun, but of course, obviously, publishing is the things that are really what you really, really want to get behind, put out there. And I think I tend to put in more time on published things, like just endless runs or whatever.
I was just going to add too, because I know that your shop is like fairly new, but you've been picking up a lot of speed, and you have tons of there's people that are really interested in what you're doing. Just keep going. I mean, at this point now, I'm reaching out to people through Instagram, or I'm cold emailing people that I'm just like a fan of their work, and just kind of asking them to make projects, knowing up front that I need to kind of remind them that it's not going to be super indulgent, we're not going to take months and months to get it done, but that do some of these projects by hand, and if you can come through and actually be here with me physically to work on a project, that's kind of those are totally affordable projects. I've ended up publishing things fairly quickly that just came around and weren't incredibly expensive, and they gave the artist a chance to make something brand new that wasn't a repeat for them in their studio, and you can kind of express to them let's make this fresh, different from what you've been making. Don't feel pressure to make it exactly what you've made before. And for me, so I'm able to keep the projects that I make similar financially within that realm of what I'm making in from a contract printing job. So that's where I equate them. I'm I have it. It's just a little bit of money, but I'm sure I can get an artist that wants to make something quick and have fun with it and not be so precious with it.
Because I was going to ask you about working with Arno Beck, the edition you were doing with him then. It was also a combination of screen printing, but
yeah. How
did you like working with him? He's a nice guy.
I mean, he's amazing.
Yeah.
I was just totally, I went to go, Arno Beck, is who we're talking about. That's not the image, but it's somewhere in there. He's a German artist who actually was just at NADA, and I went and I was just in touch with him through Instagram. Maybe that's how you met him as well. And I was just kind of amazed by what he was doing, realizing that a lot of his big complex projects were all made through printmaking techniques, huge, big, ridiculous woodcut things. And then I just went to NADA. We made a quick, meet you at your booth at 2 o'clock, and we literally just kind of hit it off. It was very easygoing, and I just sort of was if you ever want to come back to New York, I know you're here for a couple days. And he, lo and behold, seriously 2 months later, he was I'm coming through. And I was I have $200, we could get some paper. And it was, I make sure up front that I'm telling people I really want to make something with you. I love your work. You get half the prints probably, depending on what you want to do with it. And that's as easy. And then he came and he actually showed me so many things. I hope you get a chance to work with him. Yeah, we did some weird letterpress, silkscreen things that he was doing. May was there. We were like taking the press apart and doing the weirdest, like split fountain things that I was like, that's not possible. And then it totally worked. And I was like, Jesus, man. So he'll be, I'm excited to have him back around again. But Arno Beck, if you don't know his work, check him out on, that's his handle on Instagram, Arno Beck. Just tell him you want to work with him. He'll work with you.
Any other questions? Yes.
I have a weird general question. So I'm hoping one day to start my own print shop, and I'm trying to anticipate all problems, which is impossible. And my biggest worry isn't, working with the artists or coming to the technical stuff. That's what we love to do. My biggest worry is all the business aspects that I'm not trained to do because I don't have any business experience. So I was wondering if you guys had any general advice or weird business things that you've encountered that you wish you knew earlier on?
Well, I'm fortunate that I had very good mentors who helped me. It wasn't until I left Sean Hughes' shop that I was able to get a scoop that wasn't actually straight. But you learn to do with what you have for as long as possible and know where to put resources that will be an advantage. And this takes time. And none of us go into this profession to be business people. So we're already at a disadvantage. And if you have an inkling of business in you, then at times that'll be interesting to you. One of the crushing things about being in New York City is that it costs so much money to do. So you want to mitigate your risks, you want to collaborate with people, you want to have partners, and I've been fortunate enough to have trusted partners at all times who've helped me and allowed me to grow, and they've reined me in when I've not been appropriate on the business side. Do you want to speak to that?
I'd say get prepared for very long days for a very long time too, because I think it just takes, I don't know, for me it's like I did letterpress job printing for years and years and years, so it's like I always knew that, those wedding invites are always going to be there, if you need, and I did it, I was lucky too because I had some mentors, and I had a very aggressive accountant who would give me good advice. And he just said, why don't you just double your prices? Then you don't have to work half as much. So I think it's really good. And I would say, well, then I have to pay so many taxes. He'd say, but you're still making more money. Don't you get it? So it's also, I had a really good undergrad professor too who told me that. He said, you're going to figure out what it costs, what you have to charge. Then you're going to add in your electric bill and your phone bill and your rent and your this and your that. And but it's not easy. I feel like you have to put so many, I don't know, maybe I'm being pessimistic, but I put in so many years of, the print job by day and then nights and weekends for years of doing all the job printing and stuff, just to get really experience, so then you take those projects to the next level, and then at a certain point you can do these really complicated nightmare projects that are very big, big prestige kind of, difficult nightmare things that will get seen at MoMA or somewhere, like that. So it's this gradual thing. I think that's been my experience anyway.
Yeah, I just say goodbye to your weekends for a little while. But that's fine. I mean, we still do. If I'm printing during the week and doing stuff, I'm still like, we could go to the print shop for half day Saturday. And then it ends up being like a 6 or 7 hour day, and then you get to the end of that day and you're like, we're not going in tomorrow. And then it's like, well, we could get like a little bit done tomorrow. We could prep the paper. So just, as long as you're okay for however many years and saying goodbye to the weekends.
Well, you just gotta love printing, that's it, If you love printing, you'll be fine.
Did that help at all?
That was not helpful for everyone.
Well, I can tell you a little story about that, too. I just heard about these Viennese printers. They're an hour outside of Vienna. I will not reveal their names, but they're a pair, they work together. They do these insane, like 8-foot long, like double drop woodcuts that are like super tiny, fine, like insane printing. Like I met them last fall, and they were showing pictures of these projects they do, and then somehow it came up like, well, what do you do for holidays, or where do you travel? And they said, oh, well, on Christmas our favorite thing to do is print, because we love printing so much. So okay, there's somebody out there that's going to be printing.
Any other questions? I have one. I mean, there's been a lot of sort of back and forth around the balance between the paid jobs and the publishing. And I myself, I'm also a publisher, I'm a French, and in my experience, there's also a kind of a contradiction that the more aggressively you publish, more difficult it is to get the paid jobs because nobody trusts you. They think you steal their artists.
They're going to steal their artists.
So, on the other hand, it's very hard to, I mean, the paid jobs are not necessarily the ones you want to work with. So there's this kind of trade-off all the time that if you raise your publishing side, you get a certain resistance from the people who used to be your clients. And if you are successful with the publishing, somebody else usually wants to step in and take it over. Like the galleries say, oh, why don't we just pay you? Do you have experience in this kind of field?
For Luther and I, we were publishing like artists that no one else was publishing, so that was our hook.
As long as there's not a lot of money in it.
Yeah, exactly.
You should introduce yourself. We have some very prominent publishers in the room here as well, right?
Glenn's like, luckily there was no money in it, so we didn't have to worry about it.
Well, I think to that end, many of the artists we work with, I've worked with other publishers. I think we showcased some talent that we knew was there when we were early publishing, and now I have to say I love seeing the artists that we started publishing with other people. And there was always, I don't know if you have this, I'm always jealous of a great print. Like, oh God, I wish I had done that. You know, like, oh, why couldn't that have been mine? But I mean, there's no way I could do it all, right? So then you have to give over to this other side of you, like, well, what, how can I learn from looking at this thing? What is there that I couldn't have done, and how? There's so much to absorb. So part of this ongoing relationship with artists is this trust level. There are times when publishers come to me, and I know that an artist works with another print shop, and I would do that job, but you should talk to their print shop. I think this is a valuable thing to do. And I've had publishers, I know print shops that were barely holding on and working with one artist, and publishers who wanted to come to me instead. I went to the print shop and said, is this what's going on? This is not, is this cool? Do you want me to bid on this? So I think that there's a level of trust here in this room that I hope we can leave with still after everything we've said. But I think we make this relationship. We should determine what this relationship is, and it should be equitable. And I think that's why we're here today, because it has been so far.
Well put.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say well put.
Any other questions? No? Well, if not, let's give a big round of applause.